Well, it turns out that two of our favorite beloved honeymoon couple, my thing keeps pulling over, have some wonderful wisdom about this holiday that we're about to celebrate. And so it's my pleasure to turn it over to the honeymooners, Andrew and Connie.
Hello, hello.
Yes, it's been an extended honeymoon. Now it's how many years? 3 years? 2022?
No, the honeymoon started the moment we met. Come
Yes.
on.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about the history as you understand it and have researched it.
All right, and I would like to start with a brief little personal thing because I arrived in this country on Thanksgiving of 1969, which is 56 years ago. Right now, I was landing in Florida on a flight from Barbados. I had just sailed a really beautiful racing sailboat across the Atlantic to Grenada and then to Barbados and then to Grenada. And then I flew up to America and arrived on Thanksgiving Day. So I regard myself as a latter-day pilgrim. And speaking of pilgrims, I, believe it or not, found myself a pilgrim, a genuine pilgrim. Her genes, her DNA came across the Atlantic. Is it 405 years ago?
Yeah,
Wow.
my 14th great grandfather and great grandmother came over on the Mayflower and signed the Mayflower Compact, which was the first document of democracy in the Western world here. But what we want to share is what's called the first Thanksgiving. And it was a 3-day intercultural celebration of Thanksgiving for a great harvest, which they arrived at through the Native Americans, Squanto showing them how to plant Indian corn because they were farmers. They knew the earth, they knew the plants, they knew the trees, they knew so much, but they didn't know how to handle Indian corn. And Squanto taught them how to do that.
What do you
And
do when you do that?
you plant it in with fish and with the three sisters.
Plant them in a mound with three little fish that come in a migration up this little creek right there in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They still do.
Yeah. And so what we want to share is that this time has been kind of shrouded in misconception and misunderstanding around what exactly happened in that 3-day celebration, which was just that. And they lived in peace and friendship for 54 years. They formed a peace treaty when they first met in the spring of 1621 with the Osamequin, the Pokanoket sachem, the Osamequin Massasoit. And they formed a peace treaty when they first met in the spring, and then in the fall they had this 3-day celebration. And it was a time of gratitude because, and Andrew is very familiar with the history that occurred before the Mayflower came.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I think they at that time were unbelievably grateful, both sides, both the so-called pilgrims, the folks who came off the Mayflower, and the Native Americans they bonded with. Because what had happened to the Native Americans in the 4 or 5 years prior to the coming of the Mayflower was an incredible pandemic that decimated the coastal Indian populations. As much as 90% of the Indians on that coastline, all the way from Maine, all the way down to the tip of Cape Cod, never went any further than that. But this coastal plague, and it was plague, it was a bubonic plague, it wasn't smallpox. There's a lot of different theories, but I'm a historical researcher, so I've done a lot of work on it, looking into what happened before the coming of the Mayflower. And so the Indians had lost maybe 90% of their people, and the Pilgrims lost 50% of their people that first winter. They didn't meet, there was no welcoming party of Indians waiting on the beach for them. They landed on the 16th of December in the middle of a mini ice age. It was freezing cold. It's not the time to arrive. They'd been delayed so many times before they could get the beginning of their journey, get underway. Anyway, they had lost 50% of their population. Connie's family lost. There was one survivor of 5 people. There was one 17-year-old girl survivor who was her 12 times great-grandmother. So imagine the feelings of grief and devastation that both parties must have been feeling. Plus, there was a native tribe, the Narragansett, who still had 3,000 warriors. The pandemic did not reach them, meaning that they could have been wiped out at any time. And the two groups coming together gave each of them a little bit more security than they had before. So I'm just imagining the degree of gratitude that was present at that first Thanksgiving. And they didn't think of it as a Thanksgiving, but they did think of it as a harvest festival. And it was obviously the gratitude factor there must have been just enormous.
Yes, and because the native people had been taken out several years before, they were being threatened by the Narragansett. So they were looking for a partnership, and felt that the Pilgrims would be it would be a good idea to come into friendship with the Pilgrims. So they formed that peace treaty that lasted 54 years of peace and friendship there in Plymouth, which was ended with the King Philip's War. The son of the Massasoit was called King Philip.
His English name is Philip, yeah.
And it's called King Philip's War because there was all this pressure from the Puritans came 10 years later in 1630 and founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and all the Connecticut and everything, the pressure on the land. And not everyone was of the frequency. See, we look at it as a frequency thing, that the Massasoit and the Pilgrim leaders were at a certain frequency and they saw each other's humanity. And there was a spiritual alignment between them because the Pilgrims were seeking to build a society based on freedom of conscience. They stood up to the King of England and committed treason because it was against the law not to go to the Church of England. But they saw, because the Bible had been translated into English, they saw that God intended for us to relate directly to the divine, not through a church, not
And
through
bishops
and all that,
pomp and circumstance,
which
yeah.
is totally native, which the native way is the direct connection to the divine. And so there was a spiritual alignment that happened there in Plymouth that first 54 years. And that's the spiritual beginnings of this nation. And it's just such an important perspective to lift up our hearts and open our hearts to the spiritual beginnings of this nation, not the boots on the ground, okay, who did what to whom and all that. Subsequently, there's a light at the beginning of this nation that
Gem, yeah.
that can set us free and shift the psyche of a nation is very much dependent on its origin story. And this origin story is shrouded in misconception and misunderstanding. So we're bringing that high perspective on this story. And thanks, Scott, for letting us share it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And, again, what touches me whenever I hear you share this story is the awareness that both sides had gone through so much loss. Half the Mayflower dying just on the trip over.
Well, they didn't die till they got there the first winter.
Nobody.
The first winter, but still, what a hard start. And then our pandemic had hit the indigenous people. So, yeah.
That's the important thing is beforehand, before the Pilgrims arrived.
It was probably the water. There's unfamiliar organisms in the water, like dysentery or something, some relative of that. And they were just dying all over the place. It was horrific.
Who are you referring to?
The Pilgrims.
The Pilgrims.
Yeah. What they died of. They didn't die of. They had food. They actually had plenty of food. It wasn't they were starving.
It was scurvy.
And they didn't meet the native they saw a few natives who showed up and checked them out, but nobody contacted them until the spring equinox of 2021, which is 4 months, full 4 months later. So during that 4 months, 51 of the 102 passengers died.
Incredible.
My ancestor
Big
was left
deal.
as an orphan, and she married the Cooper, and they're America's first couple,
The Cooper-
John and Priscilla
The Cooper,
Alden.
actually, the Cooper, the barrel maker, right off the Mayflower.
Wow.
Had how many kids?
10 or 11.
10 or 11. Yep, they were prolific, those guys.
Well, thank God, because that's how we got you, Connie.
That's right.
So much, beautiful honeymooners. We love you.
We love you.
We'll put in the chat the link to the one last year that we
Yeah.
presented in more fully.
All right.
Yes, please do. Please do. Please do.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah,
Happy Gratitude Week.
grateful for you, all of you.